The prairie stretched far and wide, like an ocean made of grass and dust. The sun hung low in the western sky, bleeding red and gold across the horizon. Evening was coming fast. The land was quiet, too quiet, except for the lonely sound of hooves beating against the dry earth. A man rode there, tall in the saddle, his shape sharp against the fading light. His name was James Carver, though most men only called him the Cowboy. He was not a man people knew well. He moved from one town to another, from one ranch to the next. Some said he was running from a past he never spoke of. Others said he was simply a drifter, a soul too wild to stay in one place. James carried no family, no wife, no children, and no close friends. His only true companion was his horse, a strong bay mare named Dusty. His cabin, far off in the lonely hills, was quiet as a grave. Inside it, no laughter ever rang. The nights were long, filled only with the crackle of firewood and the whistle of the wind pressing against the boards. He had grown used to silence. He had learned to live with it, though sometimes, in the dark hours before dawn, the silence felt heavier than stone. That evening, James guided his horse down toward a dry creek bed. He was looking for signs of deer or elk, some trace of life. He needed meat for the week ahead. His throw bag was light, his stores nearly empty. The ground was cracked, the grass yellowed by summer that had given little rain. Dust rose with each step of his horse. The land smelled of heat and loneliness. James scanned the horizon the way cowboys do, steady, sharp, always watching for trouble. It was then that he noticed movement. At first it was so small he thought it was the wind stirring a bush. But when he looked closer, he saw something strange. A figure, small, crawling, moving slowly near the dry creek, as if the ground itself weighed heavy on it. James pulled the reins, and Dusty stopped with a snort. His eyes narrowed. Out here, in this empty land, no figure belonged. Bandits, maybe. Or worse. He touched the rifle slung across his back, a habit born of caution. But as the shape came clearer, his breath caught. It was not a grown man. It was not even a grown woman. It was a child, a little girl. She looked no more than 5 years old. Her skin was darkened by sun and wind, her hair tangled and falling across her face. She wore a torn dress made of soft buckskin, and her bare feet were cut and dirty. She moved slow, stumbling as though her strength was gone. James dismounted quickly, his boots hitting the dirt. His heart thudded in a way he had not felt in years. The little girl stopped when she saw him. Her eyes, dark as coal, were wide with fear. She did not run, though she looked ready to. Her chest rose and fell fast, like a small animal caught by surprise. James crouched low, keeping his hands open so she could see he meant no harm. He said nothing at first. Words were not easy for him. He had lived too long with silence. The child swayed on her feet. Her lips were cracked, her cheeks hollow. It struck him all at once. She was starving. Without a thought, James reached into his throw bag and pulled out a piece of dried bread and meat. Slowly, he set it down on the ground between them. The little girl stared. Her eyes darted from the food to him, then back again. She hesitated, fear battling with hunger. Finally, her tiny hands reached out, snatching the bread. She ate fast, like a creature afraid the food might be taken away. James sat still, watching her. He did not rush her, did not speak. His heart felt heavy. He had seen hunger before, many times in camps and towns, but never like this, not in a child so small. When the food was gone, the girl licked her fingers, then looked at him again. There was still fear in her eyes, but there was something else too, something softer. A question. James finally spoke, his voice low and rough from disuse. "You alone out here, little one?" The girl did not answer. Maybe she did not understand English, or maybe she simply chose silence. The wind stirred the dry grass around them. James looked at the setting sun, then back at her. She could not stay here. Not another night. The coyotes would come. Or worse. He took off his long coat and gently wrapped it around her small shoulders. She let him. Her body was too tired to resist. "Come on," James muttered softly. He lifted her into his arms, light as a bundle of sticks. Dusty stamped her hoof, but stood steady as James climbed back into the saddle with the girl held against his chest. The ride back to his cabin was slow. The sky turned dark, the stars sharp above the desert. The child slept against him, her breathing soft. James looked down at her small face and felt a strange stirring in his chest, something he had not felt for many years. He could not name it. When he reached his cabin, he lit a fire in the hearth and laid her gently on a blanket near the warmth. She did not wake. James sat beside the fire, staring at the small figure curled in his coat. His cabin, always silent, seemed different now. The crackle of fire, the soft breath of the child, it filled the emptiness in a way he could not explain. He leaned back against the wall, his eyes heavy, but his mind restless. Who was she? Where had she come from? Where was her family? He did not know. But one thing he knew for certain. He had found her starving, alone, and near death. And because of that, he could not turn away. That night, James Carver did not feel like a drifter with nothing to his name. For the first time in many years, he felt as if fate had placed something, someone, in his path. And though he did not yet understand why, he knew this night would change his life forever. The morning sun rose over the prairie, soft and golden. Its light touched the hills, the dry grass, and at last the cabin where James Carver lived alone. Inside, the little girl stirred on her blanket by the fire. She rubbed her eyes, blinking at the warmth, as if unsure if this place was real. James was already awake. He had been awake for hours, listening to the sounds of dawn, the crack of the firewood, the distant call of a bird, and the soft breaths of the child. He had not slept much. His mind was restless. He did not know what to do next. He had given food to a starving child. Yes, he had carried her here, kept her safe for the night. But now what? A man like him, living on the edges of the Wild West, was no father, no guardian. His life was too rough, too lonely. Still, when her eyes met his, big and dark, he felt a strange pull in his chest. She was no longer just a stranger. She was something more. He handed her a tin cup of water. She drank slowly this time, calmer than the night before. When she finished, she looked at him and said her first word, "Mother." Her voice was small, cracked, but it carried weight. James stiffened. So she was not alone. Somewhere, her mother was out there. Before he could think further, he heard footsteps outside. Soft, steady, deliberate. Not the steps of a child. James rose, hand brushing the handle of his revolver, though he did not draw it. He opened the door. There she was. A tall Apache woman stood in the early light. Her black hair hung in long braids. Her face was proud, sharp, yet beautiful in a hard way, like stone carved by wind. Her eyes burned, fierce and watchful. She carried no weapon in her hands, but James knew at once she did not need one to be dangerous. The little girl cried out and rushed forward, throwing herself into her mother's arms. The woman knelt, holding her child tight, whispering words in Apache that James could not understand. For a moment, it was as if he did not exist. Then her eyes turned to him. She rose slowly, her daughter's small hand clutching her dress. She looked at the cowboy, studying him the way a hawk studies a rabbit. "You fed her," the woman said, her English rough but clear. Her voice was strong, like the wind that sweeps through canyons. James said nothing. He only nodded. The woman's gaze hardened. By our traditions, a man who gives food to a starving child becomes tied to that child. He becomes tied to a family. James blinked. He was not sure he had heard right. "Tied," he repeated. The woman nodded. "Yes, you gave her life when she had none. Now you are bound." Silence fell heavy between them. James shifted, unsure. He had never been bound of anything before. Not a town, not a ranch, not even a woman. His whole life had been one of drifting, moving wherever the trail led. And now, by some tradition he did not understand, this proud woman was telling him he belonged. He wanted to protest, to say it was not his way. But then he looked at the child again. She was smiling at him. A small, shy smile, but real. She remembered the bread, the coat, the fire. She trusted him. The Apache woman seemed to see it too. Her sharpness softened, just a little. "You are alone," she said, her eyes narrowing. "I see it in your cabin. I see it in your face. My people say a man with no family is like a tree with no roots. It falls in the storm." James swallowed hard. Her words struck deep, though he tried not to show it. From that day, things began to change. The mother came often with her daughter, bringing food from the land, wild berries, cornmeal, dried venison. She would sit by the fire, telling stories of her people, their ways, their songs. James listened quietly, not speaking much, but her words sank into him. The child grew lively in his presence. She ran around his cabin, chasing the chickens, laughing when Dusty, his horse, nuzzled her hair. She drew pictures in the dust with a stick, sang little songs in a voice soft as a breeze. James found himself smiling more, though he had not smiled in years. He spoke more, though words were still hard for him. The silence that once ruled his cabin now broke often with laughter, with voices, with life. But not all was easy. One night, as they sat by the fire, the Apache mother spoke again. "Some of my people will not like this. They will say you are a stranger, a cowboy, a man of another world. They will not trust you." James looked into the flames. "And what do you say?" he asked quietly. The woman's eyes met his. There was strength in them, and something else he could not yet name. "I say my daughter lives because of you. That is enough." Her words warmed him more than the fire. Days turned into weeks. What had begun as custom slowly grew into something deeper. James felt it in the child's laughter, in the mother's steady presence, in the way the prairie sky no longer seemed so empty. One evening, as the sun sank red behind the hills, James sat outside his cabin. The little girl was chasing fireflies, her giggles filling the air. The mother stood nearby, watching her, her face softened by the glow of twilight. James turned to her. "What is her name?" he asked at last. The woman looked at him with surprise. Then she smiled faintly. "Ahioka," she said. "It means she brought happiness." James felt the name settle in his heart like a seed. Happiness. Yes, that was what the child had brought to his lonely life. He looked at Ahioka, her small hands reaching for the glowing insects. Then he looked at her mother, standing strong and proud beside him. And for the first time, he understood what it meant to be tied. Not by chains, not by duty, but by love. In the wild lands of the West, where a man's life was often dust and shadow, James Carver had found something he never expected. A family. And as the stars rose over the endless prairie sky, he knew this bond, born of hunger, kindness, and tradition, would shape the rest of his days. Sparkle's moral of the story. In the wilderness, survival is not only about strength. It is about kindness, trust, and the ties that grow between hearts. One act of giving can turn strangers into family, and loneliness into love. Red Hot Hash.